Canada's new passport faces some serious backlash. Air Canada and WestJet scored lower than expected on a satisfaction study, and there is an update on the WestJet pilot strike. Let's talk about it today on episode 4 of Just Plain Fun. Well, welcome to episode 4 of the Just Plain Fun podcast. I'm your host, Hunter, today, and it's going to be a really exciting, fun episode today, I think. There's actually some really interesting stories that we'll be going over with, and so to not waste any time, let's get right into it and start with the first story of the day, and that's actually about Canada's new passport, some of the images that got released about what it's going to look like and some of the images that are being removed. It's facing some serious backlash here. So just recently, a little bit of a backstory, the government of Canada announced that they're going to be releasing a new updated Canadian passport with some new security features, etc. And according to the press release, the new passport celebrates Canada's heritage and identity with iconic images of Canada's natural beauty throughout the 4 seasons. It also includes a new cover design with an outline of a maple leaf, the first significant change in decades. The new passport will start rolling out later this summer. So, with that was kind of the official statement that came out with it. But I would argue, and I think that if you just look up Canada's new passport, the main news stories you're going to see is that there are a lot of people who did not see it this way. As I mentioned before, there's been various artists and actually a lot of everyday Canadians who took to social media, Twitter, etc., to express their frustration with the new design. Namely, I guess I should say that many individuals are quite upset about the pieces of Canadian history that appear to be removed now. Some examples of this include the removal of Terry Fox and Nellie McClung. Nellie McClung was the activist, author, and politician who was instrumental, you could say, in getting the vote for Canadian women. A little bit different about her story is that she actually used a lot of satire in the way to get the women the vote. And so, I mentioned her using that satire because honestly, if you were to look at a headline discussing the image changes that are happening to the new passport, you'd probably think that it's a satire headline at first, but unfortunately it is not. Terry Fox also there was a Canadian who got bone cancer and had decided to fundraise for cancer research a number of years ago by running across the country with only one leg. He had a prosthetic leg on the other, so schools all across Canada will typically do a run in his memory, and the donations still continue to pile in with the Terry Fox Foundation. And that movement will continue, I'm sure, for the long future ahead of us. But with that statement, though, to be removing them, a lot of Canadians, number one, were upset about that. But that's actually not the only update causing some eyebrows to raise, as crazy as that might sound. There's also images being removed that related to the Second World War. There was some warplanes that they're taking out, that kind of paid homage, I guess you could say, to Vimy Ridge, for example. And not only that, they're removing, the Stanley Cup, the Grey Cup, and I'd argue those are two of some of the most recognizable trophies in the country, as well as some very iconic prairie landmarks. So the prairies, if someone has not been, that's kind of your Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. There's a lot of fields, a lot of flats in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, mountains, very nice mountains in Alberta, but a lot of fields, a lot of farms, and a lot of oil. Oil and gas is kind of the bread and butter, if you want to call it that, especially here in Alberta. And partially Saskatchewan as well. But the new passport is going to be removing the pump jack that is used for oil and gas, and that will be replaced with wind turbines. So I will let you kind of read into that however you want to see it, but it appears, that there's maybe a little bit I guess what the goals of the government are being pushed into the new passport. So the question then might remain, well, is the government going to backpedal and reverse these changes that are at, a first surface look attempting to remove many forms of our history from existence? I mean, I doubt it, but, this is one of those scenarios, again, where only time will tell. So hopefully, maybe they'll see a lot of this feedback from Canadians that these aren't changes that are welcome or wanted at the time. But again, only time will tell on that one. We'll see what happens at the end of summer when these new passports are supposed to be rolled out. Next story that we're going to move into, and that is that there was a recent study done with almost 8,000 passengers who flew on large North American airlines in the last couple of years, and WestJet and Air Canada actually scored well below average. And so kind of an interesting first glance at that. There was a few different categories that they looked at. Your first class, business class, premium economy, and basic economy. And in the first two groups there, so the first class and business class, Air Canada placed 5th of 6th. And just a bit of a, contrast, I guess you could say, to the counterparts in the United States. JetBlue Airways and Delta Airlines came first and second, respectively, for business class, and then they swapped spots for premium economy. In economy, Southwest Airlines, Delta Airlines, and JetBlue snagged the top 3 spots, and that's even with a meltdown that Southwest obviously had at the end of December. There were thousands of flight cancellations, and they're still in the top 3, so not sure what that says about the Canadian aviation and airline industry at the moment. In those, the economy side, though, WestJet ranked 5th, and Air Canada was 8th, and there were 8 in the running. So definitely a little bit of a interesting news story that I saw when I was looking up some stories to discuss today. Hopefully, though, obviously in the future, they can turn that around. Obviously, we want to be very proud of our Canadian aviation sector and what we're able to provide for Canadians and people around the world. But at the current state, right now, it would appear that many travelers who have traveled on various North American airlines simply don't prefer Canadian travel, or the Canadian airlines for their travel, I should say. So moving on to the final topic of the day, and it's one I think that actually many Canadians, if I ever look up aviation news, they're becoming increasingly worried about by the day when it comes to their, end of May summer travel plans. We have a long weekend coming up here pretty soon, Victoria Day weekend there. So a lot of people are getting concerned about the WestJet strike that is now imminent if they are going to do so. As I was drinking my morning coffee and reading some of the headlines today, I did notice Global News actually did an interview with Bernard Lual, who's the union representative for the ALPA, the Airline Pilots Association. And they asked really quite, I would say, decent pressing questions about the potential job action that seems to be looming, as the 16th of May is the planned date where they are allowed to legally strike. And so actually in this interview, though, I was actually given a sense of hope, if you want to call it that there has been progress in the last couple days to avoid this strike. I'll be sure to link the video below, but in it, he sort of stated that we have seen the progress and hope it continues, and so this way we can resolve without a strike. Again, the last thing pilots want is a strike right now. And I would argue, I think it's much more than just the pilots not wanting to strike, but I would say that even WestJet as a company and as a whole, all the executive management, all the staff, none of them would really want to strike. I think that it would be nearly impossible for WestJet to recover from. Obviously, based on that survey we just talked about before, they're going to be trying to, reinvent themselves and bring about, a lot of value for consumers. That seems to be the goals of the executive leadership at WestJet. And so right now, a strike, I would argue, would be one of the largest detriments to them. And honestly, I would make the claim, I think that it would cause them to, in the near future, declare bankruptcy, just due to the amount of people that likely wouldn't even trust them again. You look at social media, and there's constantly, many individuals, and I think rightfully so, saying they'll never fly WestJet again. I can't blame a person when you have already some of the most expensive air travel in the world, and that we talked about obviously on a previous episode. If you're not able to even get onto the flight, that's going to frustrate you even more. People here already get upset about our wait times and about, like I said, the cost of air travel. And so to not be able to deliver and meet the claims of what the pilots are asking for, I think might be a major blemish on the WestJet record if they do end up going on strike. Now, the strike notice can be given as early as tomorrow, so we'll see what happens on the news. Obviously, I'll be keeping a close eye on that, making sure, hopefully, that obviously WestJet is still not going to be going on strike. The pilots are happy, they find a deal, they come to an agreement. That would be I think, optimal for not only the Canadian aviation space, but as I mentioned on episode 1, hopefully be preferable for, I'm supposed to have a trip to Ontario here at the end of the month, so it'd be really nice to be able to get onto that flight. But again, only time will tell us, and obviously, like I said, with this now looming, starting tomorrow, we could see as early as then for the strike notice. As well, there is the option, though, for the lockout notice from actually WestJet themselves. So we'll see if maybe that transpires. Who knows? We'll be looking, seeing what happens. And with that, though, I will say, that I'm hoping, and I'm sure everyone listening to this is hoping, that tomorrow we'll look onto the news and they'll state something along the lines of WestJet pilots strike a deal to avoid the strike. That would be a best case scenario, really hoping that's how things turn out. But again, only time will tell. But with that said, that kind of wraps up our episode for today. I know it was a little bit of a shorter one, but definitely still enjoyed doing it, still love doing it. And I want to thank you right now, obviously, for checking out this episode of Just Plain Fun. If you want to find me, I am on Twitter at JustPlainFun380. You can also find me on YouTube, Just Plain Fun A380. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss a future episode. It's always great talking to you. Like I said, I'll be linking all those articles and the video down below. But be sure to enjoy your weekend. Stay safe out there. Have a lot of fun. And just have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.